that habit of self-pity is the first step towards self-destruction, because all of a sudden you're headed down, your focus is affected, your effort's going to be affected, your self-confidence, self-esteem, everything's going to be affected if you start going down that road.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast, where we interview coaches and leaders to find out not just what they do, but how they do what they do. Becoming the best version of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it.
Today we're joined by head men's basketball coach of Northlake College, Tim Mcgraw. Coach Mcgraw is a veteran coach with more than 30 years of experience, ranging from junior high school through the professional level. He's in his 25th year at Northlake. He was named NJCAA Division III National Coach of the Year 3 times for leading the Northlake College Blazers to the national championship in 2006, 2008, and 2017. He was named the Coach of the Year in 2000, 2006, 2007, 2008, and 2017. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Man, thanks so much for doing this. This is an honor to get to ask you these questions.
Well, the hard part is coming off of Coach Drew and Paul Mills. So
but Tommy
bar really high.
Tommy Thomas was in there, so you can. I'll have you after him, and then you'll be fine. No, it was cool. It was cool to have my high school coach on too. So
that's good. I like Tommy.
Yeah. Oh, he's great. He's great. Yeah. Everything going good with you?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
Just recruiting. We need 19 new kids.
19.
Yeah, we have one kid coming back, so we're bringing 19 new ones.
Wow.
We're definitely shooting for 8 or 9 transfers. So that's
how does culture drive performance?
Okay, that culture is totally it's a new word in our basketball world, but I think it's a great one in terms of it defines what you believe, what your goals are, and what your philosophy is, and your way to get there. Our culture is defined by several key elements that we live out daily. One is respect. We are huge on respect for one another, for the officials, definitely for the opponents. And obviously that goes counter culture in our culture in the world, where disrespect is honorable and expected. And the second thing that's been huge in our culture is, and obviously this one is universal in college basketball, and that is just maximum effort. And I know that sounds so nice and easy to say, but it's just not the way the game's being played at lower levels. And then all of a sudden kids hit the college level and the coaches get fired for losing. And I always ask them, how many summer coaches get fired for losing? You ever heard of one? Of course, they never have heard of one. And I think that's the starting point for them to realize this is a whole different world they've got into. And I think you can go in virtually every college gym in America, and maximum effort is going to be out there dealt with almost every single day by every single coach. But the next one is really big that I think that the kids really struggle with. And I'm not going to talk a whole lot about how they got to this point, but just no self-pity. Self-pity, I think, is just consuming our victim mentality in America to the point where every we've got, it's 300 million people who are victims in America, and it hits all ages and everything. But when it comes on to basketball court, self-pity instantly short circuits all the progress that we need to make, because it is so individualistic. It's all about a person thinking for themselves. It's just totally against everything about teamwork and being a team. Next one is huge. It's focused in the moment, and this one's and every one of these things we're going, obviously, is, as a coach, it's a reflection of you. This way I put it: if I see the players, whatever I see the players doing, acting, thinking, That's just a reflection of me. If they're disorganized, well, that's because I'm disorganized that particular day, that particular time. If I'm not motivated and happy to be at the gym, it's going to show in them instantly. So focus on the moment where you forget the past. It's so easy to fall in the pattern of these kids so bad this year. Last year we were great, and I know that's a huge one. Like for you, you lost your major player, best one you ever had, and now did he sign with SMU? Is that correct?
Yeah, he's going to play at SMU, which is really cool.
Yeah, but anyway, we can always focus on the past or worry about the future, and it's just the hardest thing to do is focus on the moment, going out there on the floor and focusing on what we have to accomplish that day. Obviously, the kids fall into that where they're thinking about everything in the world except improving as a basketball team when they come on practice. And the last one is probably our most important one for our culture, and that is overcoming adversity. And that's just something that we have to dwell on every day. In all 5 of those things, I have to bring my maximum effort. And trust me, it's hard to be respectful sometimes to kids who are disrespectful in their own world. So every one of those 5, I have got to model those myself.
Because there's so much gold there with those 5 pieces. I want to go back to the maximum effort. I've asked my players before to raise their hand if they feel like they know what maximum effort actually feels like. I think a lot of players actually don't know what their 100% is because they never get to that point, never push to that point. In college, how do you get those kids that have come from either high school program or the habits with summer ball, whatever it is, where maybe because they were so good, they didn't have to bring that maximum effort? How do you get them to that point?
Well, the best coach in the world is called the bench. And they've always got to be able to look over it on that bench and see 8 guys capable of coming in for them. And obviously that's a hard thing to create because in my level, that's about recruiting with no scholarships. If you were at an NCAA Division I, you're recruiting against programs that have far more advantages than you. If you're at a high school level, that's hard because you're living with the talent in your school enrollment. But I think that's a starting point for being able to it's not about yelling at the kids that makes it. It's not about screaming at the kids. I mean, it's not about being vulgar and profane with kids. It's just about the best way to teach kids, I think, is ask them questions like you just mentioned in terms of is that all you got? Now, the problem arises every kid, if you ask them, they're going to tell you, yes, I was playing my hardest because that's the speed they've always played. And they believe that, they are convinced in themselves that they're playing the hardest. And obviously they may be playing as hard as they think defines hard, but that doesn't mean they're going to be productive. And if they're not productive, then they have to go to the rec center and live the rest of their basketball lives there. But it's a daily journey, and there's no great secret on how to improve the maximum effort problem without having tremendous competition for every minute that kids play. And so, but it is an issue, and I think you have to have a kind of balance. Sometimes you run them extra, and sometimes you make them go sit out. It's got to have kind of all spectrums of the problem, how to deal with it. And the other thing that's hard on maximum effort is as dealing with, okay, I have 16 kids on this floor today, and I've got some kids that their score would be 90% on maximum effort, and I've got other kids that are at 60, and then there's some guy over there, he's going 35% today. And so it's a challenge dealing with 16 different people, and at the same time dealing with the team situation. And that comes into knowing the kids. Some kids, the nicest thing, the happiest thing you could do to them is tell them to go sit down. And then the other problem is if you put them out there to make them run for not having maximum effort, well, the kids that are already loafing, they're just going to loaf on that too. And unless of course you put the clock to it. And that brings up another point for creating adversity and creating the maximum effort situation is just we use the clock all the time. Everything that we're doing, they're competing. They're typically they're competing against one another. They're competing against themselves in terms of previous performances on various things, and they're also competing against the time situation. And I think the clock is like an additional coach that you have in your program. If I was at a full ride program with 15 full scholarships, I would have a manager, extremely dependable, student assistant, we would call him. He's over there on the clock, and we're on that clock the whole practice long. We run the shot clock during the scrimmage situations, game clock, and throughout everything, make every practice just as much of a game feel as possible. And that's just another part of judging their maximum performance.
You mentioned the idea that in our culture, the blame game is going on, that poor me victim mentality. And we start to see it obviously with our players. It's kind of creeping into that environment as well. What message do you bring to help your players when you can see that me monster inside of them starting to come up and take hold?
Well, the interesting thing about it is I have to deal with myself before I even deal with them, because I think we as coaches, we have a tendency, and right now I can sit here and compare myself to a coach that I played 10 years ago and a very even game, and now he's a Power 5 NCAA Division I head coach, and I'm still where I am, and I've been here for 24 years with all of the challenge of that. And so we as coaches, sometimes we're the first ones to line up for the self-pity game. And so it's hard for us to address the kids dealing with it when we ourselves are not handling that well. So it's got to start with us. I totally understand that. It was so funny. I mentioned self-pity to one of my teams a few years ago, and one of the kids stops and said right there, and he says, "What is that?" And that gives it how much it swept into our culture that he didn't even have a correlation between those two words being pulled together. But I think the best is with the self-pity thing. This is one of those things you have to deal with directly, individually, face to face. It's not like you talk to your whole team and give them a speech about self-pity.
And it's fixed.
Because the humor, yeah, it'll be fixed.
Yeah, just one speech.
Give to the kids. They're going to sit there and enjoy it and love it because they're not running at the moment. And coaches who talk the longer, that's great. They just love that. Keep going. I'm taking a 6-minute physical and emotional and mental vacation and nap. But self-pity it's got to be dealt with because we have to deal with it. And the biggest thing I think we have to sell with kids is just the first issue that habit of self-pity is the first step towards self-destruction. Because all of a sudden you're headed down, your focus is affected, your effort's going to be affected, your self-confidence, self-esteem, everything's going to be affected if you start going down that road. I would say the total antithesis of that is this: thankfulness. With our kids, we try to hit them all the time with, we're thankful we have a program. Half the community colleges in the United States don't have a program. And that's just something that and sometimes I'll even run across a video, a film that a kid has sent from me who's in a third world country trying to get here. And I'll pull that up and show the kids, okay, these kids are begging to come here. And I had one that I loved so much. It was probably 9th grade kids, and they were on a muddy outdoor court in Haiti or Dominican Republic. And it was just sobering. and they had puddles on their court in the mud, and they were out there shooting their layup line. And thankfulness is the first step that we all have to go through on the self-pity battle.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Biology. What's your BSA score? The Biology Skill Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NIA and NJCAA to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 10-minute, 100-shot test can be taken for free today on the Biology mobile app. Elevate your game. What is one quality you see in leaders that coaches and players need to cultivate in their own habits and actions?
Self-discipline and creativity. Those are gigantic things. I think that leaders, and it kind of ties with what we've already been talking about some, but self-discipline. In fact, we have a poster that said a man's level of success is dependent on his level of self-discipline and level of self-motivation. You'll notice I have that in my office, and I have it in two different places in my team room. And we try to really hit them on that, is that self-discipline is just the key to everything. It's kind of at the bottom of all of this.
Right.
And the other one is creativity. Now, this is an interesting thing. I'm 63, and some days I play like I'm 65, and I'm so disgusted at myself. But I mean, my point is, I still go out here and do shooting drills.
That's awesome.
That's my definition of my workout. I don't want to go to that weight room, and I really don't want to go jog 4 miles. I used to, but that's kind of passed me by. But my point is, I love to, if I'm trying out a new drill, or an individual drill that I'm considering doing on my players, I'll try it on myself. And if I feel it, I feel like that's helping me, then I say, this is valuable. And then and on the other hand, I may tweak it and say, okay, this is what else I can get out of this. And so that's for individual drills, just a good way to help the creativity. And so many of my drills have been adapted for me just going out here doing my own individual thing. And the game of basketball is changing so much, so fast through the years, and everything's changed about it. And it's like we're at a point in our game where it's hard to define, okay, who's in charge of the game? I mean, or whose game is this? And sometimes I feel like the NBA and the NBA people, their community, they think they're it. They think they are the game. And sometimes I think NCAA Division I, they think they are the game. And yet there's people at high schools and small colleges all over the world that love the game and produce in it. And the point is, in the mix of all of that chaos, the game just goes through all kinds of changes, and not all of them are good at all. And I think the coaches who can the quickest adapt to the changes, whether that means incorporate some of the good things coming into the game as it gets better, or addresses bad things coming into the game and deals with it in a fruitful, wise manner, those guys are going to be very successful, rather than the coaches who are always at the point they're letting the game just kind of dictate itself. And that's where we are today, where so many kids have been so very unbelievably poorly coached, especially through the high school worlds, and definitely without a question in the summer worlds, to the point that the skill level is less than it was in years gone by, and that's not getting better. So creativity on how to deal with where the game is now. If you think about it, all changes since I've been coaching junior college. We've been 28 years of doing it, starting in 1985. We've shot clock's gone from 45 to 30. 3-point line wasn't even, it was invisible, didn't even exist the very first year. And now it's I don't know, I guess we're presently at our third distance of the 3-point line. I can't even keep up with. and so do have to just be creative and deal with all the changes in the game, and kind of say, okay, what are the good things I can take from it and incorporate into kids, and what are the things I just have to fight every day and say, you know what, if your body was like LeBron James, what you're doing would probably work, but it's not going to work in our world because you just don't have the body to make it happen. And this is interesting. I always tell people, kids, who's your favorite player? And of course, they'll come up with you 3 names of superstars. And I say, who your favorite player should be? JJ Barea, any dude with that body that can last 15 years in the NBA. That's who you need to study. I mean, that's what you need to study.
That's a great point. What are some things in the game that recently that you see that are good? Some good changes, some good trends.
I'm not so sure I see any good trends really. Kids don't pass the ball better than they used to. They really don't shoot it better. Shooting percentages verify that. If sometimes I'm tempted when I go watch one of these all-day events, just a shot chart every 3-pointer.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
It would, because on a typical day at any gym of these, juniors and seniors and sophomores playing in all of these major events with NCAA Division I, head coaches sitting on the front row, they're shooting probably 24% on threes. Their mechanics are terrible. And you can, yes, their footwork's terrible. And most of them can't get a 3 off unless somebody gives them a perfect pass. So the game stand and watch completely. The kids have no ability to set screens and use screens. So there's a lot of negative. This one disturbs me a lot. Just the love for the game is just non-existent. I mean, they just do it to be popular. I drive by and I see quality outdoor courts at parks that are just empty. It just blows my mind.
I think that comes to how much structure there is right now. You have a controlled practice, then you have a controlled skills workout, then you have a controlled game, and then that pattern just keeps revolving. There's very little, like we kind of say on Mondays and Fridays, we just play pickup during our open gyms or our athletic period right now, and it's the lab. Like there's no place for them to experiment and try things and or just love playing, like love to compete and play with each other, right?
It's sad that 20 years ago, kids would go, it was typical for them to end up playing in games at gyms where they're playing against kids 8 to 10 years older than us, 25-year-old men. And that was how the game was passed down. And all of that decades prior to where we are right now. And guys would learn more with a 25-year-old guy just wearing them out than their little personal trainers that they'll have their mamas pay $40 an hour or $20 an hour for guys that never were players themselves. I'm just always there's just so many things in the basketball culture right now that just are senseless, and you could go all day on it.
And I think you're right on the money with playing against older people. One of the biggest things, most influential things I did as a high school player was starting my sophomore year. I played on an adult men's YMCA league team, and good players, not big names or anything like that, but yeah, they would just beat me up in a good way, and I learned how to use my body, learned how to take contact, learned how to be tougher, learned how to not complain. And so that is something for players that what a great advice is to find a place where you can play against older, more mature players and learn from them.
No question. That's a great plan for them.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. What's one thing that makes your program different?
Well, this is one of those things that, and this ties in with what I've been saying, but I mean, that's interesting. That was the next question. And that is just love for the game. love for the game and respect for the game. Kids don't have a respect for the fact that the NBA exists only because Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, and Magic Johnson came at the same time and saved the league. They don't understand that at one time that the league was playing at 40% capacity and the NBA finals were being played tape delayed after the 10 o'clock news. They see the NBA now and think, well, that's the way it's always been. Well, three guys saved the league and made it. And so love for the game, respect for the game, history of the game. I want to put that in my gym, and that's important. Now, do I succeed at that? Probably not half as much as I'd like to, but that's definitely a big thing for me.
Would you say that that's a big factor in your recruiting, is that you're looking for players that, if their high school coach says he's a gym rat, he loves being in the gym, loves spending time?
I would say versus every high school coach that you hear, every college coach that you run across in the recruiting trail, that's just foremost in their talking. They'll use terminology of, he's got a great motor, and of course that's new terminology, but it is perfectly put. It's very definable. What's kind of common about or funny about terminology is, 10 years ago, if a coach said a kid was a dog, that was just like that meant he was loafing, and it was just a horrible. That was just like almost mama called the coach problem, and now that's like the ultimate compliment.
Yeah.
It's the diving on the floor. He's competing, doesn't care what position he's guarding. He's just going to compete, be physical, and be tough. But anyway, yeah, it's hard to find those kids, but it's definitely a major part of recruiting because we can take kids we believe who their skill level needs some work, and we can improve that. But I think all college coaches would basically say solving the motor problem is much harder in terms of taking a kid and speeding him up 30% after he's just played probably 10 years at the same speed he's going right now.
That's a good point.
And what's so funny is, I go watch my grandson was in Upward Bound when they were 5 and 6 years older, 5 or 6 years old. They were playing harder than they do in high school.
One thing that I think as a player, you're always looking for separation. Like, how can I separate myself from all of these other players that want the same thing? And I think with all that structure that we talked about earlier, one thing that could separate players now, is that love of the game and wanting to be in the gym and wanting to outwork other people, because it does seem to be fading a little bit, or just less. You just see less kids with that motor, like you talked about.
Oh, there's no question that is a great separator from the kids. And without our athletic scholarships, we are left to recruit the kids a little undersized, the ones who were the second leading scorer on their team or third leading scorer on their team. Those are the kids we get. So we look for how much room for improvement is there in these kids. And one thing that's unique that I've been pointing out to our incoming seniors turning into freshmen is, I think the year that kids make the least improvement in their basketball career is their senior year. And there's complacency that hits, and also now they're the one getting guarded by the 10th grader in practice every single day, and they probably did better when they were the 10th grader guarding the senior 2 years ago. And so I think that's, for high school coaches, I think that's something they need to evaluate and trying to figure out how to be creative to attack that dilemma and that problem. Because I think the more I look at it, the more I see it. Is I've watched kids play at events as a junior and watch them as a senior, and coaches will sit there and they'll say he hasn't improved any. And I think I've kind of figured out the reason why.
Yeah. And sometimes those, before their senior year, they don't know, or they haven't made up that decision of what they really want to do after. And so they've been training
Right.
as if they want to go play in college. But then sometimes those kids, they get to their senior year and they realize, man, deep down, I don't love the game the way I thought I did. And so I'm just going to have a good senior year, but I'm not going to put in the time. And they fall into that trap a little bit. You're right. I think you're right on the money with that senior year.
Yeah. It's kind of a sad part about where the game is right now. Great programs find a way. Probably I would find one of the top 5 high school programs in Tarrant County is Mansfield Timberview, and they've won state several times and been numerous times. And I was talking to their coach just a couple weeks ago, and the way he explained it made a lot of sense to me. Okay, and when you play the game in summer ball, that's good. That's when you're playing to show kind of your individual, what you got as an individual player. Now, when you play high school for Timberview, that's when you show all the coaches how you can fit into a team and you can be part of a successful team. And I thought, man, you have figured it out. And he's not putting down what they do in the summer. Use that to your advantage to show your individual creativity and individual skill and all of that. And then come to practice and play our games, to go to the state tournament, to show that, hey, that this is how I fit with a team. So I think that was an excellent thing that he pointed out.
How do you build confidence in players, in your players?
Okay, well, this is the way you don't. And you don't tell them about how they're doing better than they actually are. And I know they've grown up their whole life being praised for doing half of what they are capable of. It's just our culture. But anyway, the struggle in athletics is we come in here and we're different than all the rest of society completely. And now we've got to come in and work through all this trash these kids have been going through since they were 3 months old. All right, to answer your question, we create adversity. Now, well, that sounds crazy to help confidence, but we intentionally, without any apologies, we as coaches, we create adversity and help them through it. I've got a couple of examples. We do one thing that's called 8-on-4, and it's basically you've got 8 defensive player playing against 4 defensive players full court. So obviously there's double teamed everywhere they go. And it's a unique game where if the offensive team scores, they get double points. A 2-point field goal counts 4 points. If they keep the ball 30 seconds without a turnover, again, they get the ball back and they get 3 points. And then that is insane. And the kid, it's so funny. I'm talking to a kid who is a senior now. We're working recruiting him, and his dad played for me back in 2000. And the first thing the dad turns and says to the kid is, "I can't wait for you to have to go do 8-on-4." And so it does build confidence as they fight through the adversity we put on. A second thing that we do, and we're not alone in this, but we play an incredibly tough non-conference schedule. It's just insane what we've done with our kids with no scholarships, and we have won 80 games against scholarship schools, and we're pleased with that. But we've lost a lot of. I don't even talk about my overall coaching record because it's tarnished just because of all of playing 10 to 12 games a year out of our 30, where we're just totally outmatched. And maybe we'll win 1 out of 5 of those. But that's just a huge part of our culture. People ask, how come you've won 3 national championships? The first thing I'd come back to is, well, what we did before we went to that national championship tournament and where we had to go and who we had to play. And just create adversity. Like, for instance, I know at the national tournament, you got to play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 3 games in a row, back to back to back. And so we intentionally, to one or two times during our regular season, during non-conference, we will do a 3 games in 3 days stretch. So they're used to the back-to-back-to-back. So when we get to national tournament, we'll say we've already practiced this. When we're doing one of those back-to-back-to-backs in November, we're already explaining what's going on, what's the philosophy, what's just create adversity, help them get through it. And it's not screaming. This is sad. I talked to a fellow coach who's been an NAI coach for probably 15 years. And he was talking about sending his kid to someplace because he thought it would make his son be tougher. And he was talking about, and I said, well, what do you mean tougher? And he admitted, okay, that means the guy's going to be screaming at him the whole time and using profanity, calling him the worst things imaginable. And I said, that just doesn't work anymore. That's not going to help their confidence. That's not going to make them tougher. I'm not so sure that ever actually worked, but to create confidence is a major thing because basketball is a game of confidence. And I remind them, I ask them, you can't fool yourself. You know what you can do and what you can. If you can't really go left, trust me, you know that. And that's why you will always take one dribble with your left hand and find any way possible to get the ball back to your right hand. And skills create confidence, and that there's no substitute for it. You have got to put skills in your game, or there's no way you can have confidence. Even if the coach tells you every time, every minute how great you are, and I can't even go left.
Yeah.
They're not fooled. The only thing that happens in that exchange is they start thinking the coach is absolutely stupid.
I think that's a good point. If you start to tell them to be confident in something that they know themselves they don't have the right to be confident in, that trust between you and them might start to erode a little bit.
Exactly.
I love that. I love the 8-on-4. That drill I'll definitely steal because I think so many times against, like, we know we're playing a team that pressures, and we might have gone through our press break a little bit the day before. But for me to sit there in a timeout and say, fellas, hey, be confident against their pressure. You know how to beat it. You know what to do. Like, is that true? Like, have I really put them in those positions to where they deep down, like an 8-on-4 game, guys, we've beaten 8 before with 4 guys. Because of that, you have the right to be confident against these 5 guys.
Right. I mean, especially if you're coaching high school, I would say attacking pressure is the number one offensive thing you've got to work on every day because wherever you move up, as long as you're, if you're moving up through the playoffs and you're getting closer to the state championship game, at some point you will deal with 1 or 2 extremely athletics teams who literally can do nothing beyond just press and press, press and press. And if your teams can handle that, they'll win the game.
Yeah.
If they can't, they're going to be embarrassed. And but 8-on-4, I think, is just, and I kind of just invented that 20 years ago out of necessity because we just had too many people being able to physically attack us, intimidated us. And I mean, even if I was working with 7th graders, I'd be working on their ability to handle pressure.
Can you explain the game a little bit more, just the how behind it? Like where do they start with the ball? What rules do the offense and defense have?
Well, and let me say, I'll email that in depth to anyone. But having said that, it's a full court game. So the offensive team with 4 people, they're throwing the ball inbounds 94 feet from their goal. So they got to get it down the court. We don't play the 10-second line. So, however, we do say, okay, when you finally get the ball onto your offensive half of the court, you have to stay there. We'll still call back court. So typically in our situation, we'll have, say, 4 guys have little red pennies on. Okay, so they got the practice jerseys on, but 4 guys will put on 4 red pennies. And then we'll have 4 other guys put on green pennies. So that way there's your 8 players. Now I have my 4 guys in blue that are the team attacking, and they're trying, it's a 3-minute game. It's a 3-minute game. So, and the reason I have the players with pennies is, let's say me and you were on the blue team and we're working, and of course I make a bad pass and one of the guys in green steals the pass. At that point, it turns into a 4-on-4 game, as we 5 blue players are going to be guarding those green players attacking us. So then it turns into 4-on-4 game, and let's say they shoot and we get the rebound. Instantly, the red team's back in. It instantly turns back into 8-on-4. And so we're just pressuring again, and we're facing it. And let's say we get it down there, we get a shot up and we miss, and red gets a rebound. Well, it's 4-on-4 again. Okay. We sprint back. Red's coming at us, and we're playing. Now, if we go down here and we score, so I finally throw a good pass to Matt Saman, and he catches it and hits a 3-pointer. We get 6 points for that, and we get the ball back down at the baseline again. So it's make it, take it for us. So we can make this extremely competitive on years that we have, as many kids in the gym, say 16 in the gym. What we will do is we'll even have a third team sitting out, and maybe we've got they're wearing black or whatever. So if I see the yellow teams loafing around and they're not working hard on getting the doubles, they're out. The black team's in as part of the 8 players playing, and just that's it. Back to the how do I keep the maximum effort? A big thing that is we do our best to keep at least 16 kids in the gym just for practice. So they have to work hard even in practice just to stay on the floor through the things we're doing. So, and that can really make it very creative. So we'll typically go through a three-minute game, then we'll switch it around. So another one of the 4 guys gets to have the privilege to be double teamed everywhere they go. So I used to do it 10-on-5. I've adapted it because it was just too crowded with 15 rather than 12. The biggest fear on this is you don't want kids getting hurt. So you have to be really strong on your 8 kids, that this is not a fouling practice, that you're not going to foul. There's no reason to foul when you've got 8 people to guard 4.
Right.
They don't get to get out of control and go crazy. I mean, you just stay completely on top of that. But it's a great thing to do. I mean, if it kind of depends on how many teams you have in your conference, the press, but I always, it's never going to make them worse.
That's right.
It'll never make them worse. It'll make them tougher. Now, from coaching standpoint, it's the ugliest thing you ever watch, but that's half the point. The last thing you want are pretty basketball practices. I mean, if we're not ballet. We're not trying to look elegant and graceful. I mean, we're trying to look aggressive and competitive and mentally tough. And the biggest thing that kind of mixed into all of this is you cannot, and this kind of fits in about 4 places we've talked about, you cannot have body language that tells the other team that they're affecting you. Because one, that improves that there goes your teammates' confidence in you. If you look intimidated and you look soft, you lose all credibility with your teammates. And then, of course, the extremely aggressive team, all they're going to do is just triple the power on you because they feel like they just found the weak spot.
Coaches, the one thing that every team needs is confident shooters. The last 8 years at Grapevine Faith, our teams have averaged 354 made threes each season. I love getting to share with coaches how our shooters train and, more importantly, how they think. If you would like to enhance your shooting culture at your school, contact me directly at jamodipodcast@gmail.com. All right, last question, Coach. And I've had the pleasure of listening to you at a clinic before and listen to you speak. So I'm excited to hear this answer. What's one thing you would do differently if you could start over in coaching?
That one is the easiest one I have to answer, and that is enjoy every day. Enjoy every day. Don't think about where you're going to be in a year or 5 years or 15 years. And I just literally I just wasted so many days where I remember games where I just felt like this is a career maker. If we win this game, I'm going to be on a whole different level of being able to find. And of course, it's not true. It's not true. There's so many coaches out there trying for jobs. It's impossible to get a job. There was a junior college job in Texas recently that had two guys applying for it who already had been NCAA Division I head coaches for over a decade, and they're just trying to get a job, and they're falling back down to junior college level, and you just can't frustrate yourself day after day after day thinking, if I do such and such, this is what's going to happen. And I remember putting so much pressure on myself, making my family absolutely miserable for me to be even around, because I was so consumed on moving up quick and being successful and the whole bit.
Are you ready for the speed round? Okay, I'm going to short questions. Just fire out that first answer that comes to you. Ready? Favorite ice cream flavor?
Cookies and cream.
Favorite NBA player of all time?
John Stockton.
For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
Without a doubt, they need it so bad it would help their game.
Texting or talking?
The generation that I recruit loves texting, so that's all I do.
Favorite holiday?
Easter.
Favorite childhood TV show?
NBA.
Yeah, a good answer. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
How big are they?
Last one. This is important. Godfather or Star Wars?
Oh, definitely not Star Wars.
Not a sci-fi guy, huh?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Hoosiers, really.
Nice. Good answer.
Been to the town.
You have been? Have you been to the gym?
Haven't been to the gym, but drove through.
You drove through the town. That's cool. Coach, thank you, man. It's so much for being on, and I love getting to listen to you. Every time I get to listen to you talk, it's just so great, and your insights and everything. So I really appreciate it, man.
I enjoy it. You know, the reason I know so much is because I've made every mistake there is to make.
Your ability to be at where you're at and to enjoy it and to pour into so many lives. I don't know. I mean, obviously we've all made mistakes, but you've done a lot right too.
You know, one thing that's nice is watching my guys move on. Just last week, one of my former guys started as a student assistant for me, Talvin Hester, and last week he was named assistant coach for Mark Adams at Texas Tech.
Oh, and that's cool.
It is. It's fun. Panola, the coach out there, Aaron Smith, is one of my former players. I got Jamin Copeland. He's coaching NAI down in, you probably know Jamin.
I know Jamin, yeah.
He's down in Florida coaching NAIA, so he's super guy. And that's a big thing for us. I give out a list that shows where all of our kids have moved on and what they've done and how they've done. That's a huge part of our recruiting.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.